All right, good evening, Hampstead. I want to welcome you to Tuesday, February 13th, 2024's regular school board meeting. If we can ask Ms. Melissa, can you take the roll call?
Yes. Jason Giard?
Here.
Erin Pellegrini? Here. David Smith?
Here.
Andy Cabarrus?
Here.
Carl Hubner?
Here.
And our Pinkerton student board member, Shannon Caffell, has already notified us that she will not be in attendance tonight. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools, Bob Thompson, and CFO, Jeff Dowd.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and maybe Jay and Aaron can lead us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jay and Aaron. Board members, in your packets, you have two sets of meeting minutes for your review and approval. One from the January 23rd, 2024 regular meeting, and the second one from the February 6th, 2024 special meeting after the deliberative session. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the two sets of minutes, January 23rd, 2024 regular meeting and the February 6th, 2024 special meeting after deliberative session.
Second.
Second, Dr. Hubner. Any comments, discussions? All right, all approved? There we go. Thank you all. All right, Melissa, we have no public comments, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move right over to school highlights with HMS Principal Milbury. There we go.
Seems to be on. Good evening. I'm happy to report some quarter two updates as we have just started into quarter three. Quarter two ended. Report cards are now viewable on the parent portal. That information went out, but parents who have not had a chance to check on their students' progress after quarter two should definitely jump onto the parent portal and check out the report cards. And if they have questions, reach out to their students' teams. We ended quarter two with a fantastic Hawk Award assembly, which we do after every quarter, and students are recognized for showing our 3 R's: respect, responsibility, and relationships. And a couple of other awards are given. It's always a great time for the whole school to get together and to celebrate students and the successes they've had, and this one was a particularly moving one because our 7th grade chorus asked if they could sing a song to remember Miss S, and they did a fantastic job singing a song, and there weren't a lot of dry eyes in the house. It showed I let them know after that and just kind of talked to the whole school about what courage and resilience is, and how they really were an example of having the courage to get up in front of their peers and sing the song, but also the resilience that our school and our staff have shown after the passing of Miss S. So I was really proud with that. And then also we always have an activity. So this activity student council sponsored the activity. So the winners of the awards get to participate against the staff who gave out the awards, and it was a Name That Tune activity. I will say that the staff rocked it and definitely beat the students pretty handily on the Name That Tune. There were quite a few old songs. And then we also have an amazing race going on right now with our staff So the activity of that week happened at the Hawk Awards, so the kids got to see that our teams that are participating in the Amazing Race have a knockout competition. So it was a really great Hawk Awards assembly. Winter sports have come to a close for the most part, with the exception of our cheer, and I'll get to them at the end, but our 4 basketball teams competed well, all made it into the playoffs, and most of them made it at least to the second round, and really participated well and had ultimately a great season. Our cheer team is still working. They just competed in Cheer Madness last weekend and came in second out of 12 teams, which is amazing. They've done a really great job. We're really proud of them, and they're ready to compete at Astro Blast at Pinkerton on Saturday. So good luck to our cheer squad. And then co-ed volleyball is about to be underway, started today for the first practice with 8th graders today. So that's always a popular kind of in-between season activity. And they'll have a schedule where they're competing against other teams, and it's fun to watch. This week, we are in the midst of our Love Yourself campaign. We have recognized that there has been this year an uptick in some students vaping and some substance concerns. At the beginning of the year, we had Lori Warnock come in and do her presentation on vaping, which she's come and done before, and it's a great presentation, very factual. But we need to do more. So we, with the help of Julie Barbick, this week developed the Love Yourself campaign. She's working with our student council and our 8th grade leaders, and it is a week-long spirit week with some different activities, but also every advisory, each day, the advisory activities are around how you can love yourself by being healthy, by saying no to substances. It's a mix of messages, not just, say no to drugs, but why we want to be healthy and what it means to be healthy and make good choices for yourself and your body. She's done a fantastic job of that. We're just in day 2 of that and excited about the rest of the week to come. I do want to mention that on Thursday, our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders will be viewing the teen version of Screenagers. Thanks to our SoRock partners, they've provided us this movie, and at night on Thursday, we will be showing the parent version of it. It's a really eye-opening, really in-depth movie, just talking about everything that our kids are facing today, the pressures, the social media, so there's a very mix of, it's not just about vaping, but it's a mix of all the things that our kids are encountering and how we can support them. So I'm hoping that we'll have a lot of parents in the audience to see that. We'll do some discussion after, and we'll have representatives from Southern Rockingham County Coalition for Youth there, as well as some other visitors. So I'm excited to be able to present that, and again, we really appreciate that they're offering us this opportunity to do that. I think it's really important. We're, as a staff, trying to wrap around the issue and work with support students, both who may be struggling and using and making these choices, but also students who aren't, who are struggling with the fact that it's happening in school, and then also just broadly this message and just the education to students about why you want to make choices not to vape and why taking care of your body is important. So we're working hard on that, and it's something that isn't just a one and done thing. It's something that we will continue to have messages throughout our school year and continuing year after year. No, I think we're gonna wait on that now. Thank you. And then I just wanted to mention that I think the last time we were here, we had just had the anniversary, the 275th anniversary in Hampstead. We had a great celebration, a great assembly. We have some students who have continued that work in school, and it's really exciting to see. We had a group of students with some of our teachers invite our town historian in to Mr. Morris to ask questions. They developed kind of interview questions. He came in and they were able to have a dialogue with him about the history of Hampstead. We also have some students working on a timeline of the history of Hampstead right on the wall going up the ramp towards where Ventures and Health is. It's still in progress, but it's exciting to see them develop kind of what the history of Hampstead looked like so our students can see it on a regular basis. So I'm really proud and excited that the work continues, and it's not just a birthday and then you move on. It's something that obviously will continue, and for the town, I know it continues into August, but for our school, it's continuing through the school year so that kids can continue to learn more about Hampstead. So that's all I have, if anyone has questions.
Thank you, Ms. Marble.
Great, thank you.
All right, and I know that Pinkerton Student Liaison Shannon Caffell is not here. I'd say the only update I know from Pinkerton I can say is this past weekend there was a track meet where the Hampstead students that attend Pinkerton did very well. And a lot of them placed and qualified and going further, so definitely a lot going on at Pinkerton, and we'll look forward to the next meeting at the end of March, and Shannon can give us a good update. All right. Let's see, we're going to move on to current business. Just a recap of the deliberative session. We did go through all the warrant articles and gave updates of how we got to the budget, what's there for the request for the capital reserve, and then for Article 4 on the 2 classroom addition at the central school, all passed, and there was some good discussion questions about those. So a reminder that voting is on March 12th, Tuesday, March 12th, here at Hampstead Middle School from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Looking forward to having a lot of people come out and vote. Board members, anything you'd add to that recap from deliberative session? All right, moving on. All right, we're going to turn it over to Superintendent Thompson to talk about the Hampstead Education Foundation grant donations.
All right, thank you. So I have for the board's consideration and deliberation grants from the Hampstead Educational Foundation. So just for those watching who may not know, the Hampstead Educational Foundation has existed actually since the early 2000s. Their mission is to support the education of the children in Hampstead. And they hold an annual fundraiser called the Festival of Wreaths. I know anyone in the town who's involved with a civic organization is likely familiar with the group because they create these wreaths that they auction off. The money that they raise comes back to the school. And so this year I'm excited to share 4. Given our policy on donations, 3 of this year's awards will require board approval. So I'm going to go through those 3. I'm going to ask for the board to deliberate on those, and then I'll share the 4th, which is just a notice. So the first one is for the HMS lacrosse program, and that is a sum total of $856. This is to cover 4 soccer goal posts with protective covers at $214 per cover. And then the second one, and there'll be an opportunity for board members to ask questions, is for $975. This is for the One Book, One School program. This is for Mrs. Cameron in the library. And this is just to help support with different supplies and materials that would be required for that program, which is the cost of 1 live bird presentation, which sounds pretty exciting actually, some travel costs, and some other costs, but the total funds would be $975. And then the third one is for Mrs. Wisecarver and Mrs. Mayu for the Ventures program. You may recall the partnership that we have with UNH for the soil tent, and that will just to be able to bring the program to the school, and obviously that helps support STEM program and students, not just in the Ventures program, but beyond. And that is for $600. So those are the 3 grants that I'd ask the board to consider.
And those are all from the Hampstead Education Foundation?
This is from the Hampstead Education Foundation.
Right. Thank you. Board members, anybody want to make a motion?
I will make a motion. Can I just say to accept all 3? Or do I have to do them separately?
To approve as presented.
To approve as presented the grants from Hampstead Educational Foundation.
Second from Dr. Hubner. Discussions?
No, I just wanted to say thank you very much to them for that. That's very generous and can be greatly received.
Yeah, all going to fantastic causes.
Yeah. And you're looking at just over $2,400 all combined, so definitely want to say appreciate HAF and as well as all the community members who donated in, the auction for the wreaths. It's fun to see what everybody comes up with every year at that celebration, so it's good. Any other questions, comments from anyone? All right, then all approved. There we go. Thank you very much.
And if I can,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, there's also a fourth donation, but it doesn't meet the criteria. But the board has asked me to notify them in public when donations are made. So there's an additional donation, additional grant of $195.77. This is to help support a classroom teacher, Mrs. Burkett. And it is a combination of curated math games for various math groups and a professional subscription to the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. And again, that is for $195.75. Does not require the approval of the board, but I thought it would be important for you to know that.
Was that a parent donation? Was that a?
This is the Hampstead Education Foundation.
It's a Hampton.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank
Yeah.
you again. So another couple $100, so I really appreciate that.
And we will be sure to include the Hampstead Educational Foundation Grant Awards on the grant page that is maintained by Mrs. Tomaselli. So if folks in the community want to see all of the generous grants that the district has received, you can just go to that website.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. Moving on to next, we're going to open up a public hearing on grant donation in recipient of the Youth Well New Hampshire grant. In accordance with policy KCD, we're going to open this public hearing for the grant donation of $11,539 from Youth Well New Hampshire. At this point, I'd like to invite Nicole and Tricia Brennan, the Executive Director of Youth Well New Hampshire, to present.
Thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm very excited to introduce you to this amazing new program in our state. It's called Youth Well New Hampshire. We're very excited about being selected. There were many, many applicants, and I will let Ms. Tricia Brennan explain maybe some of the bigger vision here, but I feel very fortunate that Hampstead was chosen with our grant proposal. I wanted to project this website because I think there's an abundance of resources on this page. So it's youthwellnewhampshire.org. Of course, it's available to anyone. If you click on the resources page, it is perhaps the best curation of resources that I've ever seen in our state. It range from all kinds of nonprofits and small businesses and other outfits that can kind of pull together to help the very broad needs that we're seeing in our students. So, Tricia, would you like to speak a little bit?
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Tricia Brannon. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Well New Hampshire. We are a newly established nonprofit that is passionate about youth mental health issues in our state. We started on this journey actually February 14th, 2023. So it's been almost a year since we began to formulate our mission and start working to positively impact youth mental health. I hope that you will visit our website, youthwellnh.org, to learn more about who we are and what we are doing. Our mission is to positively impact and improve the mental health and well-being of young people in New Hampshire, simply. We want to support our community as a funding source for existing programs, services, and new initiatives that impact youth mental health. We want to partner with and assist organizations beyond funding to help make their missions a reality in any way that we can. And we want to add our voices as advocates for effective and sustainable solutions to improve the mental health and well-being of our young people. In November, we decided to launch an inaugural small grants program to get our mission out to the community and for us to get a better understanding of the needs that are out there that are impacting youth mental health. Our expected total award to be given for this program was $50,000. A mailing was sent out to school districts, to youth serving organizations in New Hampshire. And to be quite honest with you, we were completely blown away by the response. We received 80 applications. Nobody knows who we are, and we received 80 applications, totaling $875,000 in need. So the decision-making process was a difficult one, with many worthwhile organizations vying for a limited amount of grant dollars. This response was by far more than we had ever anticipated, but it really energized us for our future fundraising efforts. So there could be more to come, who knows. Due to the tremendous need, we decided to exceed our intended limit of $50,000. And I'm happy to report that we were able to fully fund 8 applications, including the grant for Hampstead School District. Our small grants program was an important learning experience for us. Our eyes were really open to the extreme need of funding in our state, especially around youth mental health. And we hope to make a difference in that regard. As we move forward in 2024, our goal is to raise as many funds as possible to support youth-serving organizations that provide mental health programming and services. The Hampstead School District proposal impressed us for many reasons. The program goals that you set forth, we believe are extremely important in creating a positive, nurturing, and empowering culture. To cultivate a resilient school community by providing tools and strategies for students and staff to navigate challenges, empower students to lead in promoting mental well-being through active participation in planning and implementing initiatives, establish protective factors such as strong social connections to contribute to overall mental health, provide professional development for educators to address stress and burnout, and create a regulated classroom environment. Engage the community through outreach events, creating sustainable wellness practices and lasting impact on school culture. I have no doubt, after meeting with Nicole and Jessica, that they will meet the goals they have set forth. Their dedication, commitment, and enthusiasm for this programming was absolutely evident throughout our meeting. We look forward to meeting in the future to hear how the funds were able to create this vision. We are grateful that the Hampstead School District is creating programming that will positively impact and improve the mental health and well-being of students, staff, and community. Just to give a couple plugs for us, we have a save the date. We are doing a reception for the community. This is not a fundraiser. This is really just an introduction to who we are. It's on April 9th. It's at the Currier Art Museum in Manchester, and we would love to have you join us. And also follow us on Facebook and Instagram to see kind of what's coming down the pike. I really thank you very much for allowing me to be here this evening to join you, and I hope that you will approve this this grant.
Yes, I hope you will approve it too. So I will now ask the board for acceptance of the Youth Well New Hampshire grant in the amount of $11,539 as presented.
All right, thank you first, very much. Procedural-wise, just going to see if there's any comments from the public. I see no one here from the public. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing on the donation at 7:26 p.m. Board members, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to accept the grant of $11,539 from Youth Well New Hampshire.
I'll second that.
Discussions? Hold on a second. We did that on purpose.
I've seen presentations on Clarence Climb and in Nashua, and I think it was by Sarah Gould, with 100 teachers when it was supposed to be 20, and she did a magnificent job with 100 people. I can't imagine in a small audience how it's going to be. And I've also seen presentations by John Broderick, which I think is a part of your organization.
Yes,
Yeah, which did phenomenal stuff as well. So I really appreciate all the work you're doing, and it really does make a difference with the students. So thank you.
And Nicole, even at the highest level, just grazing the surface, could you kind of highlight what your goals are for
Yes,
using this
absolutely. I'm
grant
glad you
money?
asked. Thank you. So our grant proposal is to create wellness activities at each grade level for our students and also for staff. So we asked for a per person allocation for every single staff member and every single student in the district. I already have several staff members, classroom teachers, other members of our student support services teams that are excited to help either incorporate wellness activities and regulation activities. So really pairing our existing field trips with a wellness opportunity or creating a new outing, preferably something outdoors, with understanding the neuroscience of self-regulation. So the PD and the professional learning that Ms. Brennan was speaking of is going to be around the regulated classroom and the neuroscience of self-regulation. So what we want to do is kind of have our core teachers kind of learn that first and then infuse that into a series of activities at each grade level. We have members of the HMS Student Council that will be helping us to curate a community event in hopefully later this spring. If not this spring, it might be kickoff to the school year. Depends how our timing works out here. But it will be called a Stick It to Stress Hampstead event, where the best of those self-regulating wellness activities will be available for the community. Think of it like an expo, and they will go and participate in developmentally appropriate wellness outings. So that was our idea, and it's modeled after an activity that Connors Climb, which is what Carl just mentioned. Connors Climb is a well-known organization on the Seacoast that does mental health and suicide prevention trainings, and they do a series of events called Stick It to Stress and Stick It to Stigma. But I really loved their Stick It to Stress event, and so rather than us flooding their event with members, I figured we would recreate it and do a local version.
That's great.
So that's the goal, that's the idea. And we have several people excited and on board already, but this allocation will help us with supplies and transportation and professional learning and anything we need to make this a very lively community event.
That's awesome.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you very much to your organization for what you're doing. It's, very needed right now, and you're doing good work, and we really appreciate it, and we appreciate you guys writing this grant and accepting it. And nice job.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments, discussion, questions? All right, all approved? All right, thank you very much. All right. Let's move on. Student Services Update by Mrs. Parsons.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I think I kind of alluded to this at the deliberative session last week when it came up around some special education questions. But I'm here tonight to give you an update on our special education and where we're at from our Student Services Department. So the purpose of this update is to provide an overview of the recent increase in special education referrals, student eligibility within our district, and I want to highlight the impact and present a plan of action to address the current challenges. All right, So referral rates. Before we get into referral rates, I want to just talk with you a little bit about what it means to have a special education referral. So a special education referral is a formal request, and it can be made by a parent, a teacher, a caregiver, any kind of staff member who may suspect that a disability is present in a student. And so to determine, and then our goal when that referral happens is to determine two things as a special ed team. The first thing we need to determine is a disability present? And then the second thing you need to determine is if specially designed instruction is required. Those two things have to happen in order for a child to be eligible for special education. So there are instances that happen quite often where we have students who have a documented disability that might come from their doctor or that the team might recognize, but the team has determined they don't require specially designed instruction or specialized instruction. And so if that's the case, then they would not qualify for special education. So when referrals come in, you can understand that there's a lot of work that goes into the referral process. The team has to determine whether or not there's a suspicion of a disability based on the concerns presented. Then if they do suspect a disability, they then have to determine what assessment measures are needed in order to collect data to further evidence whether or not a disability is present. Then they have to evaluate the student. And depending on how many evaluations were recommended, this could be several sessions outside of a classroom for that to happen. And then once the student is assessed, the evaluator then needs to analyze the data and then write a report, then provide that report to families, and then have a meeting to discuss the results of that report. So that all happens in a referral. And you want to know how many days our team has to do that once a referral is made? 60 days. And that timeline is 60 days. So holidays, weekends, vacations, that 60-day timeline does not have any caveats that go along with it. So it is just 60 days. And 5 days prior to that meeting, reports have to be sent home to families. And so there's just a large amount of work that goes into referrals, and I have to say I'm extremely proud of the teams that we have in both buildings and how they process referrals, because they are very dedicated to ensuring that they are examining and evaluating all the areas in which there's a suspicion of a disability. So they take a lot of time and attention to detail. So what does that mean? So that's the referral process, but I want to kind of highlight it for you quantitatively and how that's impacted. So in 22-23 school year, you can see in Navy is the HCS. And for the entire school year of 22-23, they processed around 30 referrals. As of today, when I last checked in with Dr. Cheney, and this is after I had created this graph, we are at 29 referrals at HCS to date. So that's one less referral than they processed the entire school year. And we still have quite a few months left. And for those of us who work in the world of education, you understand that this is what we call busy season in special education. Because what happens is kids that are assessed at the beginning, we assess our children at the beginning of the year, we recognize patterns of strengths and weaknesses, and then we start to try to address those. Then we assess again. We just did our winter assessment where we did many of your students participated in iReady. Those scores have now come out for the second round, and we've looked at whether or not kids have made progress from where they were assessed in October to now. And if we see some glaring gaps, or we continue to see areas that are red flags, then we start to make more referrals as a district, because we want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our students. So as you can see, already this year we've processed the same amount of referrals at HCS than we did all of last year. Middle school, you typically see less referrals in middle school, so you can see those numbers are trending down, but they're fairly similar in the sense that in line with what they have been year after year. All right, so I want to give you some other data, special education data from the 2021 school year all the way through the 2024 school year. So the first graph up here, And I'm going to explain, this is a special education grade level breakdown. So for each grade level, I've broken down how many kids are identified requiring special education. So the entirety of that, the bar, is all of the population of that grade level. The navy part of that bar at the bottom is the percentage of special education kids. So that number is highlighted for you at the top. So in pre-K, for instance, there's close to 40 children in that grade level. And you can see of that 40 kids, 37% of them are identified requiring special education. So, and that's the same going across the board. And so when this data was taken in 2021, the approximate, and I'm going to say approximate percentage of special education students in Hampstead was around 21%. And I say approximate because what you're going to recognize is this is only pre-K to 8 today. We certainly, as a student services department and as a district, are responsible for our students in grades 9 through 12 at Pinkerton. But today I really want to focus on the pre-K to 8 because that's where I think we can make the most impact when we're looking at trying to continue to support our students. And you see less referrals in high school because at this point, more often than not, we've already started to recognize some of those learning challenges. That doesn't mean we don't identify in high school, but you see less referrals. So any questions about this graph before I move on? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the 22-23 school year, which was last school year. As you can see, there are some certain changes. There are definite changes. And overall, if you look at this, the percentage went up from about 21% in the 21-22 school year to about 23% in the 22-23 school year. Any questions about this graph? Okay, so next graph is where we at as of today in February. As you can see, one of the biggest areas of increase is our preschool. And I think it's been kind of communicated out that has been an area of need for us in general in terms of resources. We have certainly had a lot of students come into our preschool program, which we were really excited about, but there's been a requirement of additional services for those students to be able to be successful in that program. And because of the increase in need, wanting to make sure that we have enough special education teachers assigned to that program to support those students. The other piece around why it's 59% is our obligation for preschool is purely in special education. The reason why we have our preschool programming is to support students who are identified requiring special education. But we know it's best to have model students in our program, and we also offer a program for friendship students as well as just preschool kids in general. So it's helpful for us to have additional models in the classroom, but really the program that we are mandated to kind of continue or obligated for is our preschool program for students with special education. So that's why that number is much higher, because there's less opportunities to have typical peers in there, if that makes sense. Okay. So I want to also draw your attention to K, 1, and 2. As you can see, those numbers are kind of the lightest of the graph. And that is fairly typical in school districts because we have kids in K who have just come to school for the first time. And so they are learning their letters, their numbers, and just school readiness skills in general. So you typically don't see early on in the kindergarten year a ton of students on IEPs. The same for first and even for second grade. Teachers are really trying to get to know their students. They want to make sure that they have really worked to kind of fulfill some of those gaps or deficits with what they can in classroom instruction before they go to suspecting a disability. So typically those numbers are lower. However, mid-year where we are, however, I would bet that in January, if I were to revisit this graph with you, you'd see much higher percentages in all of those grade levels. And that can be kind of evidenced by the fact that right now we have 5 kindergarten students in referral. So we're evaluating 5. We've got 7 first grade students in referral, and we have another 6 second grade students in referral. So As you can see, we do have, we are examining whether or not there'll be more students eligible for special education services in those grade levels. So you will probably start to see those trend up as well. So overall, we're actually pretty even. So from last year to this year, our percentage has not increased. We're still around 23% special education. And when I looked at the overall state percentage increase-wise, the state percentage would expect that we would have seen a 2% increase from the previous year. So we're actually doing okay when you look at what the trend is across the state around what the state average trended, about 2%, and the previous year before that, the state average trended about 3%. So I think in terms of the increased growth of our numbers, I think we are doing okay. But what I think is the hard part around this is the impact that it has overall for us as a community. And so, any questions on the graph or the numbers?
I actually do have one question.
Yeah.
If we look at 2023 compared to the 23-24, you see there's quite a reduction for the fourth graders that are in 2023.
I was wondering if someone was going to catch that.
Down to the 2023, they're the fifth graders, and you've essentially cut it in half.
So
as
we
far
had,
as,
yep.
So my question is, what did we do there, and how do we apply it elsewhere? Because that's a pretty drastic change. Maybe it's an anomaly. but-
Well, David, that would mean that you're inferring that those kids are no longer eligible for special education, and that actually isn't the case. Our demographics can shift sometimes where students moving in and out, or they potentially will transfer out. And so that grade level, that going into this school year had a significant change in the numbers because of moving in and moving out. We actually checked those today. We had 5 kids on IEPs actually just move out, which doesn't typically happen.
Move out of the district? Or
Out of the district, yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a matter of moving out because they got the services and
Yeah,
now
we
they're...
checked the numbers, yep.
All right.
That was a matter of just the students moving. So that, kind of an anomaly, I think, but we did check that, because we checked that number like 6 times, because I'm like, there's 40 to, it's a
Right.
huge discrepancy. So we went back and we looked at our exit, because we have to, there's a process to exit students out of special education, and so we looked at the reasoning behind why those students were exited from
Right.
Hampstead, and it was due to move-outs.
All right, thank you
Yep,
for that.
you're welcome.
Can you just talk really quick about the importance of early intervention and identification and long-term for
Yeah.
those students?
Absolutely. So what we know, early intervention is the best intervention. And I think COVID had a huge impact on early intervention services. And how that worked is typically when a parent would bring their child to their pediatrician's office, if they recognized that maybe they were behind in some developmental milestones, speech, fine motor, gross motor, they would then refer to an early intervention agency that is in their catchment area. And so that early intervention agency would then evaluate the student and then write goals, provide services until almost their 3rd birthday. And then they call us and they say, school district, we have a referral for you. We'd like for you to take a look at this kid and see if they would be eligible for special education services as a pass-off. That, during COVID, decreased significantly. There were less pediatrician appointments, there were less opportunities for early intervention to get those referrals, and then EI also went into the homes for a lot of this, and so that kind of stopped for a while as well. And so we are seeing now an uptick in our referrals back for early intervention, which is another reason why our preschool numbers are increasing, is because they're actually out there recognizing that these students may not be meeting developmental milestones, and it's important for them to be assessed to determine whether or not there might be characteristics of a disability. And so when that happens, when they recognize there might be some of those start to be some of those gaps, we start to intervene at age 2.5, 3, 4, and the goal is to hopefully, it's easier to close those gaps when they're younger versus when they're in 4th or 5th grade, and those gaps kind of expand. So it's really important that our resources and that we really look at how often we are intervening and when we're intervening at the younger grade levels. Did that answer?
Yeah.
Okay, so the overall impact of the increased referrals and kind of our increase in special education numbers is the increased evaluation responsibilities for those special education teams. So I kind of went through what that process looks like. And so when you are doing that with 30-plus kids and you only have a small team, it's the same team members having to continue to do those evaluations. And at some point, there's not enough time in the schedule to continue. There's only so many hours in a day and so many referrals one person can process. And so when we have, when we only have one evaluator per area, 1 or 2, we recognize that we shift maybe their job responsibilities. For example, our school psychologist, we had to shift a lot of her counseling caseload to other counselors in the district to allow for her to test, because she's the only one who can test. But then when her schedule fills up, we then go to the second impact, which is our need for contractors, whether to help with the evaluation process or to help with services. So when we have used all of our resources internally, we're now having to kind of go out and find contractors to help us, because all of the referral process, the identification process, and the eligibility process, and special education is federally mandated. And so we have to do these things. And so if we don't have the services in district, I have to go out and find, or we have to go out and find someone to provide the service. And then the third kind of impact here is that there are larger caseloads for our special educators and related service providers. So sometimes our groups are really big in special ed because the numbers in that grade level are really large. And so you can go into a special education room and see, 10 or 12 kids, and that is a small group, right? And so I think that there's an impact there. The more kids we move into special education, recognizing that our current resources aren't necessarily going to be able to fulfill what is best for kids in that situation. So why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you this because there is an impact fiscally. There's an impact on our staffing, there's an impact on our resources, there's an impact on our services, and there's an overall impact on our school climate with all of this kind of these challenges. And it's really important that we have a proactive approach to kind of address these challenges. And that proactive approach includes planning, collaborating, and looking at our current resources and making sure that they're allocated appropriately to ensure that we're providing equitable services for all of our kids. So I think we have a plan of action here. And I want to say that I'm really proud of the work that we have already done to kind of, and it's validating when you look into this that we are already starting to put in systems in place to help support this special education and our students in general. So the first plan of action here, and you've already heard Nicole and I talk a lot about this over the last year and a half, is our multi-tiered systems of support. And so on here, the more we can strengthen and refine this system to make sure that it is continuously supporting all kids, not just those in special education, but kids, all kids across the district, as we continue to refine it, we're going to see less and less need, I think, for the referrals to go through, because we're catching kids before and they're getting remediated early and often, and potentially intervening before they need further or additional services. The second area that we're going to continue with is our professional development or our professional learning. And this is for all staff. So my terms there are kind of, it says special education, interventionist, and general education staff, but it's continuing professional development for all of our staff that are in front of kids every single day. And kind of start with the tiered approach to it. So really making sure that our special education teams and staff really know what specially designed instruction looks like and what evidence-based practices look like, so that we're ensuring that we're giving the students who are identified and on IEPs the best special education services. The second is our interventionists. That would include anyone who may be not in a classroom position but supporting students, whether that's our counseling team, our social worker, our reading specialists, our math specialists, our ESOL teacher, all of our interventionists, making sure that they, again, are well-versed in recognizing and providing evidence-based approaches to supporting our students. And then overall, just all of our staff, including our general education staff, is to recognize that there is a changing landscape of students in front of us. And that landscape may require us to shift our practices or update our practices to meet the needs of the kid that's sitting in front of us today. which is very different than the kid that sat in front of us 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so to continuously provide opportunities for learning to help general education, special education, and interventionist staff meet the needs of the students sitting in front of them today, so that we're going to move to the third plan of action, which is a creation of a district universal accommodation plan, which is accessible for all students. Like, what the heck is that, Jessica? It's a lot of words. But what we know to be true is that we call them like best teaching practices. But what we know is that if at baseline you walk into every classroom and it is standard across the board in terms of what a kid gets for an accommodation to access the curriculum, that should happen for every kid. It shouldn't look different depending on what teacher you have, what grade level you're in, that across the board we should have a standard expectation for what a child should be able to receive as an accommodation. And I'm gonna give something very basic here as an example. Seating. Right now, the district has done an amazing job to create universal design, so you can walk into any classroom and see various types of seating. Years ago, you would have had to put that on a district accommodation plan to ensure that every kid would have access to that. We're doing that currently as a basic accommodation for any student. And so it's important that we continue to document these district universal accommodations that any child should be able to access regardless of whether or not they have an IEP, a 504, or a medical plan. And so many states have already required this for their districts. Massachusetts has a what they call like a DCAP, which is a district curriculum accommodation plan. So you can go on most websites and pull it up. And when you pull that up, you can see, as an educator, as a parent, as a community member, when a child walks into any classroom, these are all the accommodations that they have access to regardless of whether or not they have a plan. And so as a district, we want to work to have that because we want to set a high standard for what our students are able to access in each and every classroom, regardless of whether or not a plan is in place for them.
Can I ask you to explain the concept of least restrictive environment and kind of what that means?
Sure. Thank you, Carl. So our obligation under IDEA for special education is to provide services in the least restrictive environment. And so the least restrictive environment for any special education student is their general education classroom. And so our responsibility is to look at making sure that we provide the most amount of accommodations, modifications, and services in that classroom before we pull them out, which is why it behooves us to continue to work and support our professional learning about how we can provide more general accommodations within the classroom setting so students less likely have to be removed to access certain things to be successful.
So somebody can have special ed accommodations but never be in a separate classroom?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the second kind of thing I wanted to ask about. So if people are thinking about contractors, why are we going on contractors, right? Mm-hmm. So we're on a timetable. Mm-hmm. So it has to get done in a certain amount of time, and you never know what can happen. So if you leave it to the last minute to try to get the school psychologist, you may run into that. Early intervention, the sooner the better, which means they may need less modifications, assistance later, which means it's cheaper. And then obviously the most important thing, which is it's the right thing to do.
Right.
So, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Questions?
To kind of piggyback off of Carl's comment about contractors, you know, knowing the hourly rates of what some of these contractors charge, I noticed that the plan of action is basically taking who and what we already have and enhancing that in some way, you know, that being the most cost-effective way to approach this. But long-term, do you have concerns of continuing to utilize these contracted services? I know it's like a necessary evil because, like you said, you're presented with this 60-day timeline and there's no choice legally. But I guess if you can speak to, you know, your goals or any plan of action long-term, is it right now that we'll just continue using these contractors just out of
Yeah, so some of the hard part about budgeting for something in October when the numbers in February are very different, right? So that's something that I think will be hard to combat in general. So those one-offs in terms of contractors in that moment due to timelines or whatever, those things will kind of always come up. But I'll give an example. So last year, we looked at caseload, a certain related service provider. And we recognized counting how many students, how many service delivery hours are in a day, in a week, based on what was on their IEP. And we recognized we were 8 sessions short plus to start the school year. Well, that can't happen because we're already starting at a deficit. So in that situation, we had to then look and post for part-time. We try that first, and then if we can't employ from the part-time, then that's kind of when we look for contracted services. And then from there, we just have to monitor the caseloads. And so if my caseloads continue to trend upward, where kids are requiring more and more like OT and fine motor things, then I would anticipate to kind of say, oh, then we're looking at adding either more days, or would it be more cost effective for us to own this person outright versus, so those are kind of the things. The caseloads and the needs of the students really determine where we're going to have to, and if we would have to either hire or contract for somebody. So I think the answer is it's really hard to have a plan of action for that. But what I do know is it's really important for me to continue to look at caseloads and look at trends in caseloads and look at trends in services and where we're starting to see a potential decline in services. Because for me, if I'm seeing a decline in one related service area, then do I need to keep that contractor? No, I don't. I then would shift those resources or that allocation to an area that now has more higher of a need. So I'm kind of looking more at shifting the resource versus necessarily keeping it or cutting it, if that makes sense.
Probably just oh, good.
Yeah, and I will say that we have our legal obligations that we need to meet. However, unfortunately, Jessica does a great job trying to fill in these holes in these areas. It's very undesirable for us as a district to have contractors for a number of reasons, including Department of Labor, Internal Revenue Service, even Hampshire Retirement System. So we need to meet our legal obligations, but there is always, usually always, pushback from my end. Mm-hmm. We've been able to transition out consultants where we've been able to, but it's definitely not a preference. We want to have employees.
Right. I guess follow-up question for you, but another one for Jess. Talking about that, understood the all-in cost for an employee versus a contract cost might be comparable.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what we find here?
Yes.
Okay.
Not 100% of the time.
No, but I mean, it's not like a factor of 2. It's like within percentage points.
That's right. Yeah, it could be, and if between Hampshire retirement contributions and health insurance,
right,
you're there. It's provider specific, depending on who's providing the
Yeah,
intervention.
but I mean,
Yeah.
all right, and then the other question I had is more about how do you trend this? You said that, you do trend it, you do historicals, you look at your future demand of sorts. How far back do you go, and, can you just give a little bit more information on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what really is difficult when you look at the data is COVID hit us very hard. And when you look at the state percentage, special education eligibility decreased significantly the year 19, 20, and 20 and 21. So to go back before that is kind of hard.
Yeah.
So I'm looking kind of forward. So that's why I kind of took 21, 22 and started there. So it was kind of the year before I came. Yep. And I took the year my first year started and then going into this year. So that's kind of how I've started to look at the trends.
Okay.
It's interesting because as you can see the graphs, when you see those anomalies, you really have to dig in to see why there was that significant change in each of those grade levels. And sometimes the reason isn't what I would infer it to be. Like in that case, I would have thought the same as you, and then it just happened to be that all those kids moved out.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
I just have one more question. This is probably more of a Bob and Joe question. Is it getting harder to find, OTs, BCBAs, school psychiatrists? So even if we wanted to hire them, and especially when you talk about competitiveness and how much contractors are paying, the labor market, you know, what is the considerations we should have for that going forward in the future?
Yeah, it is difficult. I do think that we have an easier time if you look at our track record and our unfilled positions. Tonight, during the personnel report, I'm going to bring forward 2 names for special ed case managers, which is somewhat unheard of. So I think we have an easier time. This is a destination district for folks. They want to come work here because of the culture. They are difficult to fill, though. And we are competing with these agencies. And some of you may see them on social media. They'll go onto a Facebook page and say, we're looking for, you know, people who want to work in schools. And they will often pay for some of these positions like a generous rate, but, you know, it doesn't include benefits or New Hampshire retirement. And we often have people from some of these agencies, and I'm not naming any specific agency, who will come to us and say, we'd like to come work for the district and not for an agency. But unfortunately, we're under non-compete agreements. So it is more and more difficult. But right now, I feel like we're in a good place in terms of being able to fill the positions that we have.
Do you think in comparison to other districts, it's going to get more competitive, given the amount of people coming into special education or coming into those specialized services?
Yes, in all, it would be my assessment after having informal discussions with the university system in New Hampshire, the education department. There are very few people graduating out of their education program that are going to fill public education positions, and the need is going to be even more significant for all school districts over the next couple of years. That's why the model is, you know, to be able to bring people in, give them professional development so that we can bring them along and get them certified to teach.
And I think that that's another important reason why looking at these challenges and having a proactive approach to addressing them, because what you'll see is it's going to be less and less desirable to be in a district where your caseloads are unmanageable and you're not able to meet the needs of all the students, or you're running around and not really being able to like feel value in your work because you're not able to kind of actually make that progress with the kids. So I do think that there's value in this district because we're recognizing the importance. It isn't about a number here. It's about the quality of what these kids are getting for their education, and that's really important. And I think in the landscape of looking for a special education, I will tell you the question that has been asked in every single interview that I've ever conducted for a special educator is, what is the size of your caseloads? So I think that that's an important thing to know. And again, it's not always about the number, it's about kind of what's within that number, but making sure that those are manageable and workable caseloads, so that we are not burning out our special educators to then go and look for another position. So that's important too, which is why this plan of action for us to continue to move forward with is really important, because not only do we want to bring staff in, but we want to maintain our current staffing as well.
But with contractors, usually that's not special ed teachers. Usually it's more specialized BCBAs, OTs, school psychologists.
Yeah, so right now, a majority of our contracted services,
No, go ahead.
Okay, a majority of our contracted services right now we have quite a few paraprofessionals because we were unable to fill those at the beginning of the school year. We've actually now started, there's been an increase in those applying for positions actually to work in Hempstead, non-contractors. So I think I would say probably the last 4 or 5 paraprofessional positions we filled have actually been with employees that are employed by our district. So that's an important one. We have, the other contractors we have are like vision or hearing. We wouldn't, at this point, we wouldn't wouldn't need a full-time teacher in those areas. So those are going to be one-offs that we're always going to contract for, right? You have a couple of kids who require vision services. You're not going to hire a full-time vision teacher. However, you're required to provide those vision services. Hearing is the same. And then we do have additional OT services right now. PT is one of those ones where we wouldn't need a full-time PT, and so contracting for services is more fiscally responsible than having that person full-time on staff. And then right now we are contracting with an agency for school psychology and evaluation just because we are inundated with the referrals.
Okay. And that's not something you really can grow at home. That's something that you they have to go through the certification process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our other contractors are also contractors that we have to utilize because we have students outplaced. And so maybe the school that they're placed at doesn't have related services that they that the student requires, and so we wouldn't send our district staff there. We would have to contract. So those are areas where we're always going to kind of have to continually contract for, because those are those one-offs, and it is more cost-effective for somebody to provide, a 30-minute speech session where they're close to a school in Concord versus one of our staff members having to drive up there to do that, because then that isn't a great use of our resource.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
I just wanted to thank you for that presentation. I felt like it was really, really well done, and it was really nice to get your knowledge of all of this, so I just really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm sorry to the community, I should have told you that the presentation is posted on the Student Services page of the Hampstead School District website, so if you want to take a peek at it, it is on there.
Thank you for that, Jess. All right. Next, we're going to turn it over to Ms. Tomaselli to speak about the ESSER 3 grant fund sunsetting.
Hello again. So you have a graphic in front of you, a little pie chart of our ESSER 3 expenditures. So ESSER, as you may remember, there have been 3 rounds of ESSER funding since COVID. ESSER 3 is the pool that we are still expending. This allocation was our largest federal grant that was given to the district. The total allocation was for $424,426. The grant will be sunsetting on September 30th, 2024, so I wanted to just take a minute and kind of show you where that money went. So in the bottom, you can see the largest percentage, 56% of it for Hampstead went directly into salaries. And I'm very proud of the way that that has broken down, and I'll show you that on the next slide, but we were really able to distribute a good portion of our ESSER funding back to our own staff for providing additional learning opportunities for children, whether that be in the summer, whether that be after school with clubs, enrichment opportunities. We did a great job keeping the money local and providing those opportunities to children with people they already know. Some other areas we spent the money in were transportation. Of course, we implemented late busing. That also includes some field trip transportation. Nature's Classroom is in there, as well as some Summer Learning Academy transportation. Supplies for our after-school clubs, as well as masks for our music and band. A few years ago, they really needed, if you remember during the height of COVID, they needed to put masks over like the bells on every trumpet and in order to play, and even in chorus. So we had to buy specialized masks. Our software was about 8%, 9%. We purchased Zoom licensing for the entire district for several years. We have now transitioned that into Google Meet, which is quite a cost savings. There is a little bit of a learning curve there, so our staff has been diligently working to up their Google Meet skills. But we also purchased Snap software for our nurses so that they could track immunizations, and they also use it to just track nurse office visits. We spent about 5% on books. This includes professional learning reading material, as well as books to support some of our intervention work. We've spent about 1% on professional learning and professional services. Professional services includes things like our iReady assessment tools and other intervention softwares, and some cases that includes training for the software and the curriculums that we purchase. And then there's a little slice there for safety, and those are a bunch of new two-way radios. Let's take a look at the salaries breakdown slide. Sorry, does anyone have any questions about that first graphic? Okay, so the salaries breakdown, again, I'm very proud of how this all kind of worked out. So this is about $240,000 worth of hourly rate given back to, in many cases, in almost every case, a local employee who already works for us. You will see a chunk there, about 23% for custodians, and we also had a LNA that we added during COVID to assist with testing and swabbing and phone calls and entering. There was quite a bit of work in the nurse's office for 2 years, as well as the custodial needs for cleaning and sanitation throughout the building. So those were kind of built in. Other than that, every single slice here is an hourly rate or a stipend to oversee something. So within this, we have our mentor and PD coordinators. We ran a very successful English language arts pilot last year, and we selected the Wonders curriculum and the HMH curriculum. We have been doing some tiered curriculum work around multi-tiered systems and getting our teachers to understand the evidence-based interventions that are needed. We also have Summer Learning Academy stipends. We, for a brief period, had connection coaching when children were out on quarantine. We had daily contact with them virtually. And we have a variety of after-school clubs that we run for free at no cost to families. And so all of this has been supported by ESSER III funding. We still have a very small remaining allocation that is on the first expenditure pie chart. It's approximately $9,000, and I've kept that as a placeholder for Summer Learning Academy pending our budget approval. And then also, if you remember last year, we were able to get the Beyond School Enrichment Grant. They haven't announced yet if there'll be another round. If we can get another round of Beyond School Enrichment, or whatever they're going to call summer literacy and math kind of funding, certainly I'll be applying for that, and then we might be able to release this allocation towards a different area. But I wanted to make sure we put some money aside to run summer learning in case it didn't make it into the budget. Are there any questions?
Really good update. Appreciate the breakdown and to review it. Definitely very impactful programs to students. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to turn it over to Mr. Thompson to talk about the Two Cove addition plan design.
Can we get the graphic?
Look at all that glorious smell.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So just by way of update, as we move closer and closer to voting on May 12th, just want to highlight Article 4 and the two-story classroom addition that would add 2 additional classrooms to the central school. And Chairman Smith and I we met tonight with Bob Weimer from the Cable Commission, and we filmed a fireside chat where we had a great conversation about this building project and all the details. And there was no fireside, but I think it's more of a kind of a concept type of thing. And David and I were talking specifically about like this is like number 10. This is like our 10th effort, right? And it's very cliche to say that, Einstein says, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, we're not doing the same thing over and over again. The approach to this project is very different. And I really do feel like we have found sort of the winning formula, where we are presenting a small-scale project, one that is already fully funded. It does not raise anyone's taxes, does not require a bond or a supermajority. There's no interest to be paid. And it addresses a dire need that we have right now, which is we have run out of space. We ran out of space actually a long time ago, and what we've been doing is we've been trying to find space through kind of compromising some of the programs we're able to run at the school. We reduced the size of the library, the computer teacher teaches from a cart, and this addition helps to take the pressure off our increased enrollment. And you may recall from the fall, our NESDEC projections would indicate that over the next 6 years, we'll have 70 additional students that will be entering the central school. And without this project, we don't have a place to put them. And so again, as we get closer, we'll have more opportunities to engage the community in discussions. We have next Tuesday night at the central school at 5:30. An information night, we can come get information about the addition. You can tour the facility. We can happy to answer any questions. Mr. Smith and I will also be doing the sort of traveling road show, going to local businesses to hang up informational flyers. But it's exciting to get close and see what I think is a project that we need, and I believe what we're presenting is very reasonable, and I look forward to seeing what the result is at the end of voting day. And so, Mr. Smith, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this as well.
The only one I want to say right now is thank you to Miss Erin Pellegrini for the postcard that we approved the budget for last time, and this will be in your mailboxes come about another 3 weeks or so. So definitely appreciation of the board members for reviewing, but Erin and her artistic abilities. So with that, that's all for today. I think we've said enough about the addition, and we look forward to the response on March 12th. All right. So unless there's any questions, comments? No? All right, we're going to move on to the second reading of the 2024-2025 HSD school calendar. And Ms. Tomaselli is going to come up here. I don't know if there's any changes, any commentary, or? Nothing new to report. I'll repeat it.
Nothing new to report.
There you go. All right. Board members, I don't know if you have any questions, comments from the first reading. Then I'll make a motion to accept the 2024-2025 school calendar as presented for second reading.
Second.
All right. Comments, questions? For those at home, just first school day would be on Wednesday, August 28th. And then they'd be going to school on August 29th, and then have that Friday off for the 4-day Labor Day weekend. So that's how the school year would begin. All right, all approved? There we go. Next.
Thank you.
you.
Appreciate it.
All right, next, very energetic Mr. Dowd to come up with the 2022-2023 financial audit report. Update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I previously reported, we're done all the field work. We've got everything done we need to. I am working on fixed asset implementation. The board approved a new policy last year, and onboarding all of our assets is squarely on me, and I'm doing that as we speak, trying to get that done. We have a nice period between now and all the annual report, all the ballot, all that stuff is going on. Between now and the vote, that I can really get that done. I inadvertently didn't realize that we have, I had to actually clear out our database. We had a lot of, looked like test data in there in a live database, so I've had to go in and actually strip all of that data out and get going with our new data. So it's 100% on me, but I think we're still within the time frame of what we had estimated we thought for getting that report turned around from the time they were out for field work.
All right, so when do we anticipate that that'll be rolled up?
I'd say probably within the next month or so.
Okay, so maybe at the board meeting in March when we reconvene? Okay. Thank you. Questions for Mr. Dowd? All right, next, Mr. Thompson, update on the late start committee from Pinkerton.
All right, so the Pinkerton, I am the Hampstead representative on the Pinkerton Late Start Committee. So again, this committee is looking at the potential for a later start time at Pinkerton. Right now, we believe Pinkerton has the earliest start time of any high school in the state of New Hampshire. They start at 7:15. And, obviously identifying that shifting Pinkerton's start time would have an impact on our schedule and the schedule of all of the sending towns. And so this process has been very methodical. It has been very thoughtful, and you could characterize it as slow, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. And so we're going to continue to do this work. There is no change in the schedule or the start time for next year. We're looking at possibly the 25-26 school year. So the last meeting that we held, each of the sending towns brought their bus and master schedules, and we plotted them out, and to see, what is the time from, the time that a student first steps on the bus to the time that they get home, and how can we kind of work within that window. And what I found interesting was I've had concerns about how early some of our high school students are actually out at the bus stop. It's really early. Not realizing that some of the sending districts, some of their students are at the bus stop at 5:45 in the morning, so before 6 a.m.
Right.
And then in some cases, our students are getting home at 5 o'clock at night. And so I'm open to all the possibilities. For me, I can tell you that a non-negotiable for me is I do not want elementary school children at a bus stop in the dark. Like, we can work within a lot of different scenarios, but to me, that's a safety issue that I could not entertain. But I'm open to other possibilities. Mr. Dowd and I have had conversations about, looking at our start times, looking at our busing, consolidated busing. All the ideas are on the table. And we really have to see how this plays out with Pinkerton, and whether or not they do change their schedule, and can we work around that. So there's not a lot of action on our part at this time. I will have more information. There's a meeting coming up in the spring, and I think after that we might get a better sense. The next step after that would be, when we have a sense of where we're going, is to collect feedback from stakeholders, from our staff, and from our parents as well, to see, if we were to look at a different start time, what that might look like.
Right. And every sending school has to have the discussion as well, so it's not just Hampstead, you get many districts, so.
Yeah, it's not just us.
Right. Okay. Any questions, Mr. Thompson? All right. We're moving on. Let's see, Hampstead School District Pinkerton contract discussion. So as we talked about at the last meeting, we did send out the contract. Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Just for your reference to look at it and see if there's anything that is worth what we feel, something to reach out to Pinkerton to have a discussion of either contract modification before agreement, or just general discussion of where they're going with Pinkerton. So at this time, I want to open up the board members for anything that you saw as you were going through this, anything you'd like to bring up and discuss.
So for me, with special education, we were talking about least restrictive environment. I think the district K-8 does a great job with that. And I think Francine Flynn and Jess Parsons do a wonderful job with Pinkerton. I definitely think we're meeting our legal obligations. So going to the sending meeting and thinking about it longer, and some discussions. I don't know, we have kids that are driving by Pinkerton to go farther away, to go to placements. And I think Pinkerton provides great services for regular education. I would like to see them move in the direction where they try to be a better partner for students with more specific special education needs. It would definitely be better for the sending districts. Now, this isn't necessarily something that is a contract thing that we can put in right away, but it's definitely something I think that we should be putting some pressure on Pinkerton to try to move in that direction. I believe they're hiring a dean of student services, which I think is the right step to lay groundwork to try to move in that direction, to possibly have program special ed at Pinkerton. But I think it was surprising to me this year, and having the discussions and having that come up, the relationship between the sending districts and Pinkerton and special education services, that I think can improve, and that we should try to push in that direction.
I think that's something that when they start the committee that we had talked about before, that would be something I would suggest that we bring up to that point. I know when we were at the winter meeting, I think, Mr. Thompson, you were talking about this, that each sending district has their own student services, in special education that they outsource. It would be great if, Pinkerton had a more of a centralized place that sending districts could send to, and share costs that way, because we all have those needs. So I think that's something we could kind of scratch at, see where, for the future, if that's something we can do or not. So it's good. Thank you, Dr. Hubner. Anything else from anyone? Anything on the contract that raised an eyebrow or something we should talk and discuss more? All right.
Mr. Dowd has
Mr. Dowd?
When this contract came into effect, I was a proponent and advocate for having a service level agreement with Pinkerton as to what their responsibilities are going to be, but not just special education student services as well. And the one observation that I'll make is that they have been exceptionally responsive to our needs and our requests, not just us, but I think all of their sending towns. And so when we go to put and hard code something into a contract, it's usually for some enforcement mechanism, and at the end of the day, they're pretty responsive. So it's really tough to articulate some of this into a contract. I think that we'd like to see maybe a different process or a more robust student services special education department there. But I don't know how you articulate that into a contract and where they've been responsive in the past, to us anyway.
I agree with you, but it's one of those things that bringing it up in the discussion of the contract gives importance to it as opposed to going down the rabbit hole and getting down that. I don't think we need a sledgehammer. I think we need just a push in that direction.
The mere insinuation of a discussion is usually enough to get Pinkerton to act. So you're absolutely right.
Yep. All right. So unless anything's brought to us, I'd say we'll go ahead over the next, we have got about 6 weeks to do this, but notify that the re-up in the contract. I'll work with Ms. Thompson, Mr. Dowd on getting that going. All right. Next up, we have 4 policies for second reading. I'll go over these in general for the public, but unless we have a reason to go into depth, if there's anything from first reading, we certainly can. So I'll start to go over these, and then we'll look for a motion to accept the second reading. First policy is BED H, public participation at board meetings. This was revised to reflect enactment of RSA 18974. New statute now requires school boards to provide no less than 30 minutes public comments opportunity at each of its meetings. Previously, while most school boards concluded public comments periods in the meeting, it was not required. The law leaves boards with choices about how the public comment period is administered. This really didn't impact us too much. We already did this. This is just to keep us in line with the statute. Unless there are any questions, we're going to move on to GADA. GADA, Employment References and Verification. Required policy not on the books. This is a sample policy fulfills the requirements of every Student Succeeds Act, aka ESSA, which reauthorized and amended the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, aka EC, for intention to decrease the risk that persons who have engaged in sexual misconduct while employed at one school are able to obtain employment at another school without the second school ever learning of the prior misconduct. Again, straightforward here, but Dr. Hubner?
And I support this. I just wanted to raise a concern that there was an issue with a contractor in another district. I have full faith that you guys are doing everything you need to, but I was hoping that maybe you could find out where that school district broke down and the issue that they had and make sure that then we don't have that possible issue in our district.
What was, without going into too much detail in terms of employment verification reference, background check?
The person had a conviction on their record that was not fully vetted by the contractor, and they trusted the contractor, and they got hired, and then the district trusted the contractor, and yeah. So.
Yeah, and our contractors are subject to the same background check requirements. That is codified not only in policy but in statute as well. And I receive a copy of the results of any background check for a designated volunteer, employee, contractor, and then we'll make the determination as to whether or not they should be employed by the district.
Excellent, thank you.
And there is occasion where we have to make the decision to not have somebody work for us.
Yes.
So it does happen. In regards to the policy, I mentioned this during the policy meeting. This is, a requirement of law, satisfies a number of checkboxes, but we're not going to provide a reference to anyone that we believe has engaged in immoral, inappropriate, or illegal behavior. In fact, when we're not comfortable with, somebody moving to another district, we wouldn't provide the reference to begin with. So it's part of our common practice.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, moving on to IHAM. Health education and exemption from instruction. Last revised in 2017, sorry. Revisions connect requirements for education about sexually transmitted diseases to health education, adds language distinguishing parental opt-out of health education based upon religious regions from opt-out process for other objectionable course material as spelled out in policy IG, and clarifies the materials inspection process. Questions, comments? Okay. Last one is policy JFM, education of military children. Recommended policy not on the books, suggested adoption to reflect both provisions of the Interstate Compact on Educational Opportunity for Military Children, RSA 110D, and of HB 1653, 2022, NH Laws, Chapter 310, pertaining to military-connected students. So, any questions on this one from our first reading as we're in second reading now? On policy JFM. All right, board members, if there's looking for a motion to accept the 4 policies as presented.
So moved.
I'll second that. Some creepy eyes here. All approved? All right, thank you very much. All right. Let's see. We are going to do board comments and correspondence, and we're going to start far down to my right, Dr. Hubner. Mr. Barris?
I don't have anything.
Ms. Pellegrini?
Can I read a little something that I prepared?
As long as it's a haiku?
It's
or
not a haiku.
3 minutes or less.
No, it's quick. So as most of you know, that Jay and I this is our last official meeting. So I just wanted to take a moment.
What?
The last official meeting, you didn't know that? FYI. I just wanted to take a moment to thank the community for voting me into this position almost 3 years ago. It's been a wild ride, to say the least. I appreciate the trust you placed in me, especially during that chaotic period. So while it's been a bit of an adventure, I've learned a lot. I hope I've met your expectations and served you well. Let's keep going, rebuilding trust and improving communication within the district, and let's not forget to keep cheering on our teachers, staff, community, and most importantly, our students. You know, we're all in this together, so let's keep the lines of communication open and work together. I mean, this board has been, we've not always agreed on things, but it's always been respectful, and I really hope that that continues. So Jay and I being elected at the same time, it's fitting we say goodbye at the same time as well. And, you know, we still get a little bit twitchy when election season rolls around and we see signs out there, because chasing down signs is not for the faint of heart. But, you know, we've been keeping it going for 3 years, and so I just want to say thank you specifically to David and Andy and Carl for your dedication on the board as well. And obviously, I spoke to Bob, you know, welcome any opportunity to continue helping out in any way I can.
We already have you signed up for quite a few things. We just haven't
So thank you
communicated
very
what those
much.
things are yet, so.
Mr. Giard?
I wrote that. She just read it. No, everything that Erin said there, I just echo and I second it. It's been a fun ride. It's been a wild ride. Looking forward to getting my Tuesday nights back. And then the one thing I really want to emphasize from what Erin said is let's make sure we keep supporting our staff, keep supporting our teachers, keep supporting everybody in our schools. You know, they take care of our students, they take care of our kids, and without them, you know, we'd be lost. So the support that the community typically provides them, let's make sure we continue that.
Say thank you to you guys. You literally were part of the most difficult period in education for school board, and I was honored that you were a part of my community and serving our community. I was really proud every time I watched along, so.
And I'll just echo that. As a newer board member, you were both, role models of how to do great work in the community. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So just a little something from us 3 board members to you two.
I'm scared, but thank you.
What's in the box? And
It's really heavy, but it's not barking, so it's not a puppy.
no, I just want to say thank you. You know, Jason and I first started working on the board together back in 2019-ish, and I appreciate everything that we went through from there to now, ups and downs, smiley faces, and everything else. So appreciate it. And you know, with Erin, I begged and pleaded with her. We talked. I thought, we talked about her being on the board with her immense volunteer background and passion for the town, keeping us fiscally responsible, and her bad humor. So we appreciated it very much. So just want to say thank you to both. You'll definitely be missed. Luckily, you live right down the road, so be knocking on your doors. So thank you both of you very much.
Thank you.
And that's all I had for correspondence for myself as well. So I promised I wouldn't cry. So I'm going to just move this on over to Bob for consent agenda.
Excellent. So let's start. In your packet, there is a personnel report this evening. We have 2 professional positions for the board's consideration. One is Michaela Moskovitz, and that is for the Hampstead Central School Early Childhood Special Education Preschool Teacher. And the second one is Erin Bennett to fill a vacancy at the middle school for a special education case manager. So there's information in your packet regarding their candidacy. I ask for the board's consideration.
I looked through them, they look great, and I want to know where the heck you keep finding
I
these people.
am not giving up the secret, Carl.
We're going to have to talk in the parking lot about this.
Yeah, so, go ahead, Mr. Dowd. I'm going to say what I said earlier, which is this is a destination district, and I think people want to come work here because it's a great place to work. It's hard work, but it is a great place to work. So,
Good. I'll make the motion to accept the nomination of Michaela Moskovitz and Erin Bennett.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All approved? All right.
all right. Also on the consent agenda, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dowd.
Thank you. I have a request. Did you get that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a request for budget transfers, and these are helpful and it's required by board policy over a threshold amount, but it's helpful to have the discussion here, and I think this is a particularly good discussion to be having tonight because we have about $610,000 that I'm looking to move around, really largely so it's associated with special education and student services. Looking to move money from our salary special aid line, which I'm going to go through quickly because it ties into what we talked about earlier. We have some extra funding there available because we have had to cover that role with contract services. We had an excess of availability of tuition for special education, so we're going to move some of those funds over into other professional services, which is where those contractors would be paid from who are coming out of that top line. We also had or anticipated a major overrun in special ed transportation of about $500,000. And we're looking to cover all of those by moving some additional general education money from the Pinkerton tuition line. Before we move on, Jessica Parsons is here tonight. If you had any questions on that in particular, you're good? Cool. And then the other two, one relates to moving some money to cover for Mr. Mackey's budget. We had rated that to create the office, the lobby office. So this replenishes his budget to a degree. And we're looking to repurpose some existing regular education para positions to special education, and therefore the funding would change as well. So that's my request, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to address it, or them.
Makes sense. I'll make the motion to allow the fund transfers as presented by Mr. Dowd.
Second.
Any questions from Mr. Dowd on this? All approved? Thank you, Mr. Dowd.
Thank you.
All right, and next, superintendent report. I'll try to keep this brief. Just Aaron and Jay. The band is breaking up. So just real quick, I'll start with Aaron. Aaron, I recall the week that we had. So Aaron, as the vice chair, fills in for David every once in a while when David's out of town. And, you know, normally we try to keep as low profile as possible. And we just had a week where there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of really, really big and heavy things. And I talked to Aaron like in one day probably like 8 times, which is what I would probably talk to David to maybe a month. And I just appreciate like your steadfast leadership, your accountability, the questions that you would ask to hold us to task, you articulating the concerns of your fellow board members and the community around issues with safety and communication. And you just, you were rock solid, and I really appreciate that. And the one that really is the lasting legacy and impact is this document right here. And I apologize, this one is really beaten up. This is
I
my
have one
this
right
is,
here.
Okay, good. This
I
is
will
my
leave
car
it-
version.
I will leave it
Yeah.
for you.
I keep one in the car. So
I have the
Our-
electronic version.
yeah, our strategic plan document, it's a beautiful document, but it's not just this like beautiful design, because Aaron was the one who designed this document, and it gets a lot of praise from other school districts. But the input that you had in the development of what is actually in the plan, and this really has helped to shape and guide the district, and like your fingerprints are all over this, and I appreciate that.
Well, literally.
Yeah, literally. And then to Jay, you're just such a steady voice. I think about like your contributions to the building committee. Like I think we are where we are today with the project because people in the community respect you. And when you speak, they stop it and they listen. And I think the other really great example, Jay, was negotiations. And I know I can't talk too much about that in public, but we were kind of at a point where there's a lot of people around the table. And I think we kind of recognized that maybe there were too many of us. Maybe we need just a couple of folks to go off and have the conversation to see if we can get the deal done. And unanimously, our team said, that's Jay. And you went off and came back in a very short amount of time and said, we have a deal. And I don't know what occurred in that meeting that got us to a really good agreement, I think, for the board and for the district, but you made that happen. And I think our teachers are grateful for that. They maybe don't know about the conversation either, but. And then lastly, I think the thing that was most important for me was, hold on one second, sorry. It was the end of my year one, and you were the vice chair, and we had my evaluation meeting. And you said something to me that really stuck, that it was probably one of the best pieces of advice that you gave me, which is like, balance. Please, balance your work and your home life because, we want to have you around for a long time. And, you also sort of set the example for other people in the organization. And I really reflected on that, and you were 100% correct. And I do think I found a little bit better of a balance, and I consistently talk to my team about work and family balance, because this is a job that people burn out. But you were the one that said it to me, and I paused and I reflected on that, and I appreciate that. And then lastly, I just want to say, so thank you, but I just want to say to the residents of Hampstead, Erin and Jay have served you well. They will not hesitate in a moment to pick up the phone and call me when community members reach out to them and say, I have a concern, I have a question. They do a great job of directing people to me, but they also do a great job of advocating and holding me to task, getting answers, and then trusting that I can do my job. So in terms of the people that voted for you to be in the positions you're in, they did an excellent job with that. With that said, the only other real quick thing I just wanted to add is our Nicole Tomaselli and Marla Prue last week presented at the superintendent's conference what they call an unconference, sort of a new concept. And so they presented on the Friends Foster grandparent program that Hampstead has. This program's been around since 2006. We've had dozens of volunteers that come in, and this is not just, grandparents coming in for goodwill. They work with kids on math, on reading, developing skills, helping them navigate social situations. It is value added for the district, and the program is absolutely free. And it was just really well done. And I think what I appreciated the most was I had an opportunity to speak with one of the directors of the Superintendent's Association, who said something to me, said, Hampstead has presented a couple times now at these conferences, and her comment was, when Hampstead speaks, other districts take notes. And I thought that was a pretty big compliment coming from this association, and just speaks volumes to the work that our professionals do every single day. And lastly, congratulations. I know Shannon couldn't be here. If she were, she would tell you that the boys, the Pinkerton's Division I track team was the state champions, including Mr. Dowd's son, who was on that team. So congratulations to them.
Nice job.
With that said, I will entertain any questions that board members might have.
Board members? I'm just going to close it out. One thing we didn't say when we said thank you to Jay and Aaron for their years of service here, we also want to say thank you to Tony and to Ashley, your significant others. So there's a little something in there for them also. They are the, our significant others are the hidden heroes. They're the ones putting our kids to bed at night. They're the ones taking care of things when we're going to board meetings and other extracurriculars to support, the district, et cetera. We all have them, so we just wanted to say thank you for their patience through all this as well. It's not easy all the time, so thank you to Tony, Ashley, and your children. I didn't get them anything. I thought they were a little too young for what you got, but, maybe in a few years we'll get them a little something like that. But thank you to your families.
Thank you.
With that, there will be no non-public, so we will adjourn 9 minutes early just for Jay and Aaron at 8:51. Thank you very much.